Hello everyone. I decided to make a new video for Visual Studio 2022 since there's a new version out, and also spend some time going through the Windows subsystem for Linux and how to use it, and also show an easier way to get the getopt.h into place. Now, I'm going to, in a minute, get rid of my face here because we want to concentrate on the different text in the windows so that you can see it at reasonable size after the recording's done. Now we're going to have a moment of infinite recursion here while I switch to my desktop instead of the camera. I got to put my studio software away. All right, so first thing I wanted to show you here was when I installed Visual Studio 2022, what I selected. So I selected the development with C++, and everything else I left as the default settings. I didn't change anything else. So if you haven't installed it yet, then do that. Come back to the video after that's done. But it was basically that one option here and all defaults after that. Okay, now the other thing I want to mention is that if you've already been using Visual Studio with 280, there are still good reasons to watch this video because there are things that we are going to do in our use of Visual Studio that you haven't done before. And so that's going to be really important. Now, when we look at different IDEs, every IDE has some shortcomings. Visual Studio has a shortcoming, which there's one part of it that we're going to do once. There's another part of it we have to do with every project. So what we're going to do is, now that we've got Visual Studio installed, we're going to look at Canvas Files, Resources, and we want to look at Visual Studio Files, not Visual Studio Code, but Visual Studio Files. All right, so there's two files here, so I'm just going to click and download. So you click on the ... So I want to download this one, and it tells me download it, download that one. And those we're going to need one of them to put in place forever. One of them we're going to put in place with every project. The other thing we want to grab now while we're here on the Canvas website is we want to go to Project 0, and hey, what's here? Project 0 identifier is just a text file. We'll come back to that later in a to-do. Project 0 Winter 22. This one I'm going to have to update and link the new video and stuff like that. And Project 0 Starter, that's the one we want to grab right now. So I download that. So we got all those three files. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we've got to do the thing that we do only once, which is get the getopt.h into the compiler folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Windows R. So I'm going to hold down the Windows key and tap R, and notice it's already there because I practiced some of this ahead of time. So we want to run Explorer. Now this should not be Microsoft Explorer, the web browser. This should be Explorer, the internal program. Don't hit enter yet. We want to hit Shift Control, hold down Shift and Control, and press enter. And then it says, do you want this app to make changes? What we're doing basically, Shift Control Enter says run that program in developer mode, not in administration mode, not in normal user mode. All right, so we're going to go over to Downloads, and I'm going to grab getopt.h, and you can either, I tend to do this, so I try to remember. I like to do shortcuts, like I like to do Control-C to copy, or you can right-click and say copy. All right, now we've got to go to the Visual Studio folder. Now, we got to go to this PC, and now here's where this video is still really useful for other versions of Visual Studio, but the location might be a little bit different. So we're going to go to C drive. Then, if you're doing Visual Studio earlier than 2022, it'll be in Program Files x86. If you're doing Visual Studio 2022, it'll be in Program Files. So 2022 is in Program Files, and then we scroll down to find Microsoft Visual Studio. There we go. Then 2022, or if you're in a different version, it would be in Program Files x86, Microsoft Visual Studio 2019 maybe. But other than those two things, the folder will be the same. So now we go to Community, VC means Visual Studio using the C or C++ language. Then this is going to be different from my written instructions. I've got to update the written instructions too. So if this is the same as the written instructions, it means I got to it before you saw the video. So we're going to go to auxiliary. This is a student found this. I'm sorry, I can't give credit. Don't remember the name now. At 49 in Winter 22. But, auxiliary VS for Visual Studio include. And now notice I forgot to delete it. I already put this here for testing. We can overwrite it. We can just right-click and say paste. Don't paste shortcut, paste. I want to paste. Now this one's going to ask me, do you really want to do that? Replace that? Yeah, let's replace it. You probably shouldn't have a replace, but you will get this box which says, hey, you need to still make sure you're on admin level access. Okay, admin continue. So we've got a getopt.h, new file there. All right, so that's in the right place. Now what we can do is we can start up Visual Studio, which I've already got pinned to my hotbar down here, Visual Studio 2022, or you can run it from the Windows key. Okay, so we get here, we've got to create a new project. So this is, you have to think of this in terms of Visual Studio. Visual Studio doesn't have a project yet. You may have a project you have to do. Visual Studio says, hey, let's put all those together in something I call a project. And a project could be for a lab, it could be for a project, but Visual Studio always calls it a project. Now we got to choose what type, and notice there's lots of types here. You happen to see, hey, recent project templates, I used empty project. That's what we want. So we want to say, I want an empty project. Next. And then, where should I put it? Now, you can leave it here in source repos. I don't like that location personally, so let's ... this. I'm going to go over to my documents folder, and I want a new folder. I want a new folder for 281. So I just right-click over here and say New Folder, and we give it a new name, EECS space 281. Don't have to have a space. It would make it slightly easier if you don't put a space. Let's leave the space off. It'll make our lives easier in the long run. All right, so then let's change to that. And now we haven't said where to put the project itself yet, but we're saying this is the folder where I want to create things. So let's select that folder. Now we got to give the project a name. Hey, it prompted me with project 1. That's just Visual Studio prompting me. We're going to call this project 0 because that's what we want to do today. So the project is going to be named Project 0. It's going to put it in a folder named Project 0. Leave this thing alone. We do not want them in the same directory. That'll flatten everything down and make things really hard to find in the future. So we say leave that alone. So I'm in users, my name, documents, EECS281, new folder called Project 0. All right, so create that. It'll take a few seconds. And then we're given the Visual Studio interface. Now, before we do anything else, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to get the starter files over. Now, not every project has starter files, but many times, remember that getopt.c that we haven't done anything yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my Ubuntu Shell, and bonus points if you know where the name Gondolin comes from without looking it up. Now, here I'm in my bash home folder. Now, you may have learned that you can do things like cd/maint/c/users/payality, and I do this without thinking. Tab will autocomplete things. This is a pain to do. I'm going to save you hours of your life. What it would be cool is if I could just say like cd EECS281 right here. That would be cool. But there's nothing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create what's called a symbolic link. So symbolic link, you type ln space -s to say I want a symbolic link, not what's called a hard link. We need a symbolic link. And then we're going to type the name of the thing we want to link to, which is mnt/u. And you start typing us, you can hit tab and it'll Oh wait, it's not unique enough. If it beeps at you, you can tab again. Oh, okay, oh, we gotta go C first. /C/users. There it is, it auto-completes. Payo, hit tab, it auto-completes. And then it's not quite there yet. We need the documents folder and EECS281. And then you just hit enter. And then let's do ls space -l or -l to say I want a long list. It says, aha, EECS281 is this thing that points to this other thing. Now let's create another one while we're here. Let's make a symbolic link to C users, Payoletti, downloads, because I'm going to need that. And if you want the name to be different, you can put a new name here, like DLs for downloads. Or if you leave off the third parameter, it'll pick the last thing out of the path and make that the new name. So I just hit enter there. And now if I do ls-l, I've got downloads and EECS281. So let's cd E tab. It'll complete it for me. What's in here? Aha, project 0. So we go to project 0. What's in here? Let's do a long list. There's a project 0 and a project 0 solution. The project0.sln is a file created by Visual Studio. We want to get into that inner folder, that project 0. If you're in the innermost of two folders named the same, you're in the right place. Now let's do an ls-l here. And there's a project, some filters, some user, whatever. Visual Studio created that stuff. What I want to do is I want to copy my project 0 starter file over to here. And that's why I created the download link. Notice the tilde back here. This tilde is saying, hey, this is who you are, this is what machine you're on. This blue part here is the beginning of the path that you are in. You are in your home folder, EECS281, whatever. So what I want to do is I want to say copy tilde / down tab downloads / what do I want from there? Well, if I hit tab, it'll beep at me. Hit tab again, it'll give me a list of things that match. I want getopt.c, and then you have to put a dot here. To say copy it from where to where, you have to give it a from and a to. Copy it to dot means the current folder. Now, could I have done this with my Windows Explorer? Yes, I could, but I want to show you how to do this with the shell so that you now know both ways to do it. So I'm going to copy the getopt.c over here, and I'm going to show you another trick. Up arrow, backspace, and then let's type like what was in that folder. Project 0 starter.gz. PRO tab completes it, and then say dot to say put it in the current folder. Okay, let's do a long listing again. So we've got getopt.c. We're going to have to do the getopt.c with every project. Whether there's starter files or sample files or anything, getopt.c has always got to go in your project folder. This is the downside to Visual Studio, is it doesn't include getopt with the compiler. So we're going to untar. We got to untar this tarball. So we need to know the command tar. So tar is the command to manipulate tarballs, dash or minus. And I'm going to show you a couple commands here. T says, show me the table of contents. V says, be verbose about it, show me everything. Z means it's compressed because there's a GZ in there. We have to put a Z in here. And then F means I'm about to tell you the file name. So then what file do I want to look at the contents of? Project 0-starter.tar.gz. Hit enter. And it'll show you that's what's in there. Now, if we up arrow and change the T over here, instead of table of contents, we want to extract things. It'll give you a list of the things it extracted. So now if we do an ls-l, we've got a whole new longer list of files. Now I'm going to show you another trick that will save you hours of your life. CLEAR enter does work. Don't do it. Control L clears the screen. Just tap Control L and then you can see your listing on a new page. Now say that your page is full of stuff and you want to do your listing on, you say ls-l, oh, I really wanted that on a new screen. That's okay. You can type Control-L now and hit enter. It'll clear the screen before you hit enter. So that's really awesome shortcut there. All right, so we've got everything now that we need to go back to Visual Studio and do some work. Okay, so back to Visual Studio. Now what we have to do is we have to tell Visual Studio these files are part of your project. So we're going to say source files, add existing item. So existing item. So what I want to add to my project is the source code, the getopt.c and project0.cpp. You can control click to click two separate files and then add them. Now, if you want to look at like the Makefile or the starter files, don't add them as source code, add those as resources. So I can add resource. And oh, one thing I forgot to say here. When you add existing, if you don't see what you want, do not go browsing to another folder. That will make your life 100 times harder when you go to tar this up for the autograder because the things you want won't be in the folder. So make sure if you add existing, it's got to be in the current folder, the project 0, or project 1, or whatever. So I'm going to add the Makefile. I'm going to control click. I'm going to grab sample M and sample R and say, hey, make these all part of my resources. Add them in. So now we can look at them and edit them. Makefile, wait, makefile.txt, that doesn't sound right. Let's look at this. Oh, see, makefile.txt says, hey, you have to go get the Makefile. All right, let's grab that link. Let's go over to our web browser and let's put that link in. Okay, now I could download the whole thing and unpack it. That would be one way to do it. Let's do that. Let's download the whole thing. And it says, hey, we got several choices. Let's go with a .tar.gz because that's what we know how to deal with. Let's download that. And it should probably, it says makefile master.tar.gz. All right, let's go back to our shell. And let's say, we're going to have to, we could do one of two things. We could untar directly from the downloads folder, or we could copy it over here. So I could say copy ~downloads/ ooh, what was it called again? Let's go back here. Makefile master and then dot. So I could copy it over here, and then I could say tar x. Well, let's say actually do a table of contents first. tvzf makefile master. What's in there? Oh, it puts it in a subfolder. Lovely. Okay, well, we'll deal with it. All right, so let's just up arrow. Let's change that table of contents to an extract. And remember, we want the Makefile to be in the current folder, not a subfolder, not a different folder. So here's the command that you need if you have to rename a file or change its location. Unix uses the same command. mv is shorthand for move. So I want to move makefile-master. Notice it beeps at me because there's several things that are named that. Makefile master / MAK tab, capital MAK tab, and say dot. Say move that thing from the subfolder over to the current folder. ls-l. See, and now I've got my old makefile.txt and I've got my new makefile from the repo. And we can also get rid of things. Like I can type rm to remove makefile, not the makefile, makefile.txt. I can get rid of that. I can get rid of makefile master.tar. And if I want to get rid of that folder, I have to do this is dangerous. Danger, be careful with this command. Remove recursively makefile master, and I'm going to get rid of the slash, means get rid of makefile master and anything inside of it. If you do this on the wrong folder, you could wipe out your entire hard drive. Remove will happily do it. So when you do remove remove recursively, you've got to be really absolutely sure this is what you want to do. So remove that Makefile master. Now, if you don't like that, if you say, hey, that does sound too dangerous, what I could do is I could say cd Makefile master ls. I could say, okay, hey, there's only one thing in there. Let's just remove readme. Let's cd a level. Let's remove a directory, Makefile master. So that's the safer way to do it. Recursive removes are like, I always look at them like 3 times and verify I'm sure it's the right command before I go doing a recursive remove. They're dangerous. Okay, so now let's go back to Visual Studio. And Makefile.txt doesn't really exist anymore. Let's just get rid of that. Let's say remove this, and let's remove it because I already deleted the file. Okay, remove that. Let's resource add existing. I want the thing just called Makefile. See, notice now it says it's just a file. I don't know what kind of file it is. It's just a file. But we can look at it and edit it inside of Visual Studio. Hey, there's some to-dos here. To do, change your unique name. Okay, change my unique name, Paletti. Change the identifier. Change the identifier. To do that, I got to go back to my browser. Back to my browser, I got to go back to Files. What's the identifier? Now, here's another tip for you. Don't copy stuff from PDFs. It's dangerous because it can have invisible characters. So I'm just going to double-click that, hit Control-C for copy, or you could right-click, copy. It says, hey, the shorthand is Control-C. All right, we'll go back over here, double-click this to highlight it, and Control-V to paste it. Or you can right-click and paste. Oh, shortcut is Control-V. So I get used to these shortcuts without even thinking of it. Executable. Let's change that. Double-click that and say Project 0 is the name of my executable. All right, and then File, Save. There's a save is Control-S. There's a save all. I usually just use Control-S. So like I'm in here, I'll just hit Control-S and watch. There's a star up here next to Makefile. Control-S, the star goes away to show you that it is not edited. The star means it's an edited file that has not been saved. Now we should be able to, hopefully, build solution. Now this is Visual Studio building it. So Visual Studio down at the bottom says build started. I compiled getopt.c. I compiled project 0. 1 succeeded. This is what we want to look for, is the 1 succeeded. If you got 1 succeeded, then things are golden. Now we should be able to run it. All right, let's run this. Let's learn these keys. So build solution is, for me, at least for my install, is F7. Rebuild, Control-Alt F7. Debug, start without debugging is Control F5. Start with debugging is F5. Let's just say start debugging this. So there's a window comes up and says, error, no mode specified. That's due to a bunch of to-dos that we have to do. Now, where it says here, press any key to close this window, get used to this. Do not hit the X in the upper right. Why? Because Visual Studio does some of its error and like you stepped outside the bounds of memory checking when you press any key. And if you hit the X, you shortcut it, and there are certain types of errors like stepping outside the bounds of an array or a vector that you might not see if you hit that X. You might see them if you press any key. Now you say, wait a minute, I don't want to look at the Makefile, I want to look at my source code. Well, okay, double click on Project 0 and it'll open it up in the editor and we can start looking for to-dos. Now a bunch of these to-dos are things that you're going to have to do in the project source code. There's a separate video for this. There's the Project 0 video. So I don't want to like duplicate effort too much. What we really need to do is learn in Visual Studio, how do we tell Visual Studio, hey, when I run this, I want stuff on the command line. Now you could say, hey, well, why don't I just go back to my shell over here? Go back to my shell, I'll type make, and it creates a Project 0 executable. I do an ls-l. There's a Project 0 executable, and I can say /project 0 -m, resize, And then here's where we get into new stuff. In 281, our projects generally read from CN. We don't generally. There's one version of Project 3 that does a file stream and a file name on the command line. But mostly what we do is we do what's called redirecting input. And what that means is I type less than and then a file like sampler.txt. And what this means is, hey, operating system, when you run Project 0, don't let them see this stuff on the command line. What this means is sampler.txt should be connected to CN. Don't connect the keyboard to CN, connect this file name to CN, and the program from that point on reads from CN. So that's what's called input redirection. You can also output redirect. You can say greater than and send it to a place. Now let's just run this with input redirection, and it's going to say, oh, invalid option. This is the stuff that's in the Project 0 video. Now, this works, but this is not the best way to do things, because this doesn't give us the ability to take advantage of the interactive debugger. Now, there is good reasons to do this. If I say make all, if there was a problem, I could do valgrind./project0_debug, then -m resize less than sample-r, and it'll run valgrind. If valgrind tells you anything other than this, you might have to install it, follow the instructions for how to install valgrind. Mine's already been installed for years. But you can run valgrind inside of the Ubuntu Shell. You don't have to upload to Kane to test it. And also in this window, that's G++ minus version. We're using G++. I happen to have 7.5. I could probably get a more recent version, but this is good enough. If it compiles here in this Windows shell, it will compile on the autograder. If it compiles in Visual Studio, it might or might not compile on the autograder. But if it compiles in your Ubuntu shell, it should compile on the autograder. But this doesn't take advantage of the interactive debugger to figure out what's wrong with things. So if we go back to Visual Studio, we have to say, right-click on the bold Project 0, go down to all the way to the bottom to Properties, and then we're going to change our section to the Debugging section. And notice here, Command Arguments. This is basically telling Visual Studio, what should you put on the command line other than the /. See, we do not put the // thing here. Visual Studio already knows that. What we're going to put here is the -m resize less than sample-r. Now, I'm going to make a mistake here on purpose. I'm going to hit Enter and then OK. You can apply it. Apply is if you want to go to other places and make other changes. OK doesn't apply also. So we can just say OK to say accept that and close it. Now let's try running it. Let's start with debugging, F5, and it says, oh, unable to start program, input or output cannot be redirected because the specified file is invalid. I forgot the .txt. So let's say OK, go back here, right click, properties, and this time it goes automatically to debugging because that's where I was last time, sampler.txt. There we go. So I can hit enter, OK, and then try running it, F5, and the window appears and disappears. The problem is because I'm redirecting input, it doesn't automatically stop when it's done. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way down to my return 0 from main. Let's put a breakpoint there and let's try that again. Oh, it didn't stop. Okay, wait a minute. Aha, there's another place here where invalid mode. That could have exited. See, that return 1 from main could have stopped it. Is there any place? Let's go in the code. Let's just learn how to search. Control F. Let's search for exit. Aha, there's some exits here. If someone were to print help, it would exit on line 51. If someone were to have another command line error, it might exit on line 61. What I'm doing is clicking in the margin to put a breakpoint here. And then, oh, look, no invalid option, exit 1. So let's put a breakpoint on every place that this program could have exited. Oh, another one down here, line 74. Okay, I think I've caught all of them now. Those are all the places this program could exit. So now let's start debugging again, F5. And notice it comes back to the code. Instead of stopping and just finishing, now I can Alt-Tab, or I can go down to the bottom here to choose it, go to the output window, and it says, aha, error, invalid option. It's an invalid option because we haven't done all the Project Zero stuff yet. Now, again, don't hit X to close it. If you're done, you can do one of two things. We could say continue, because we're on an exit line, and it'll just keep running, or you can hit up here, there's a red button, stop debugging. So we can do either one of those. Continue, it finishes because it was about to exit. Now, one other thing I want to give you a warning about in Visual Studio is if you are on this line, you can see there's sort of the red circle with a yellow arrow saying you're here. If you mouse over that, it'll say to change which statement is executed next, drag the arrow. This may have unintended consequences. Don't ever drag the arrow. It would be like taking a recipe for cookies where you say add flour and you say, hey, I want to eat cookies. Let's just drag it to the eat step. Bad things would happen. It would taste awful. So let's not do that. So let's not drag the arrow around to change which step we're on. Either continue or stop it. Now, the other nice thing about this is we can look at down at the bottom, there is a section called Autos. Autos is trying to guess at what you would like to see. You can change it to locals, and it'll show you every local variable, whether you want to see it or not. You can also mouse over a variable and say, hey, what's in the variable mode? Oh, nothing. The variable mode is empty. So we could stop it here. We can say, hey, let's start debugging again. Let's put a breakpoint there on line 47. Let's start debugging and let's stop at line 47. And let's use the things like step into, show next statement, step over. The most popular ones, step over, step into, step out of. So we can step over these statements, step into them, etc. to figure out what's going on. I say step over this one. It says switch on the choice. What's in choice? Choice is 63. It's an integer. It's actually the lowercase m. If you look it up in an ASCII table, I think 63. No, that sounds too low to be it. Anyway, it says, hey, I don't know what that option is. 63, I don't know it. Because we didn't do this to do, we didn't do this to do. So what I would say now is let's stop debugging. Let's go watch the Project Zero video. Let's do the stuff in the Project Zero video and come back and try this out. Now, I'm not gonna take time to do all that. What I am gonna show you how to do is how to submit to the autograder. So we're gonna change back to our shell over here, and I'm gonna clear the screen, make help. Our help file has help on things it can do. So one of the things it can do is make sync to Kane to send the files over to Kane. If you can't get Valgrind working, use that. We can also do make full submit. So I say make full submit. It'll tell me this is what I'm doing. I'm building you a full submit. These are the things I put in it. And final submission prepared, test files included, ready for grading. Do an ls-l. I've got full submit.tar.gz. Okay, let's go back to my browser. And I'm going to, because I know the name of it, G281-1. Now, I get a slightly different version than you because I'm on faculty and staff here. Let's go to Paoletti's homepage, and we can say, hey, let's go over to that project, Project Zero, choose the file. All right, which file do I want to choose? Oh, see, I've got a folder here for things I was trying out, for Project 1, Project 2. I was getting ready the autograder. Let's go to Documents, EECS281. New folder, EECS281, Project Zero. Wait, there's no full submit. Go to Project Zero, the inner version, and there we go, full submit.tar. See, it says full submit.tar is the name, GZ is the type. That's the one we want. So we open that, and then we can see, wait a minute. Oh, wait, it's down here. So it says full submit.tar.gz, and then we hit the upload button, it'll run, etc. So that's how we can upload things. What are the different things you can make before you upload? Let's go back to our window here. You can make partial submit. Partial submit basically says there's no test files. For Project 0, it amounts to the same thing because Project 0 doesn't have any test files. For Project 1, there are test files. If you have test files and you want to submit them, you make a full submit. If you've got test files that you don't want to submit, make a partial submit. Why would you choose differently? If the project compiles or you have even one valid test file, it counts as a submit for the day. So if you're not sure it's even going to compile on the autograder, you might make a partial submit. Even though you have test files, you might do that. Personally, I would never do a partial submit. I would be either full submitting or nothing, because I would do my make all here to make sure everything works before I make partial submit or full submit. I know it compiles. I'm confident it's going to compile on the autograder. I'm going to make a full submit. And also notice that when you make partial submit, it removes the old full submit. That way you don't get confused with which one is the most recent. Now here's another tip. I did it, glanced at it myself without mentioning it. When you choose a file to submit, always look at the last time it was modified. If this was not a couple minutes ago, you might be in the wrong folder. You might be grabbing an out-of-date file. You might have forgotten to make partial submit or make full submit. So always check this timestamp before you upload to the autograder, to Gradescope. I've had students in the exam download the starter file, download it again, edit the second one, and upload the first one. And they upload nothing. And they uploaded nothing partly because they didn't take the 5 seconds to check this timestamp. So don't be that person. Always check the timestamp before you upload, and then you'll know you've got the most recent version. Okay, back over to here. Other things you can do. Make clean will undo everything. It'll get rid of all the submitter files. It'll get rid of your executable. It'll get rid of your .os. It cleans up the folder. It's nothing you can't undo, and it only undoes the stuff that Make does. It doesn't undo the stuff that Visual Studio does. And there's also another thing here called Ungraded. Ungraded could be something like, hey, I'm in office hours. I know I'm not ready to submit, but I need to ask them a question about my code. Now, if your code isn't compiling and that's what you need help with, make a partial submit. But if it compiles and runs, but hey, like the autograder submission is like 3 days out of date, well, that's a different problem. You should have been submitting every day. But if you really need to ask for help in office hours and you don't want to use up a submit, that's what Ungraded is for. It lets us look at your source code without using up a submit today. We can't see your test files. We can't see how it runs. We can't see the make output. We can't see whether it compiles or not. So it gives us really limited ability to give you feedback, but it does let us look at your code if you have a question like, I know this line is wrong. Why is this line not working? You can do a make ungraded. Okay, so that's everything for this video. We're going to get a little infinite recursion here at the end while I stop it. And good luck on the semester.